one towards a world war, one towards economic peril, surveillance state, seeing China continue to build the One Belt, One Road initiative, many, many different things that we're seeing right now. And President Donald Trump and his team, who are getting continually confirmed, are fighting for you. They're fighting for us. And so I want to bring in my friend Mario Murillo. Mario, I've never seen anything like this in my lifetime. I remember when President Reagan took over and we had a lot of problems in our country. We had a lot of inflation after the Carter administration. A lot of things were bad, but nothing comparable to what we're walking out of right now. And I really believe that if we would have had even a few more months of that same regime taken over, of course, by Kamala Harris, but it would have been the same players, I don't know that America could ever be rescued. I mean, that's how far gone we were. And we're still pretty far gone. But President Trump is doing amazing in getting this country back on track. What say you, my friend?
I think the first thing that everyone needs to hear is you got to share this show, because here's where we're going. We're about to find out that America was in much worse shape than we knew, that the evil was far deeper than we understood, that even some of the most fringe conspiracy theorists didn't get to the bottom of this, that are now coming out. You know, I was having a conversation with some very high-level pastors and leaders, and one of the things that they asked me, because I had been asking them questions, and in response, they said, do you really know what's going on, or do we understand? What is your context? And I told them, I said, you know what? I don't know everything that's going on in the government, but I know that what we're about to uncover will lead us to one inescapable conclusion. Our nation was under the command of people who wanted it destroyed. There's no doubt in my mind. You know, it's like what we're finding out about the death of John Kennedy, now that finally all the emails and all of the documentation has come out. We're finding out that this thing was bigger than we know. That's what's going on right now. The object of this show tonight is to demonstrate to you the number one point. The American people elected Donald Trump to save this country. Therefore, you can write it down that anyone who thinks he ought to be stopped is in favor of the destruction of this nation, and that they are in a position where either they have had a big gulp of the Kool-Aid and actually believe that Donald Trump is evil, or they are in total consort, and let's use the word cahoots, with a power structure that doesn't want to be removed. Now, you're going to find out tonight our position on these matters. And why is it important to the Firepower Army? It's important, Todd, to the Firepower Army to know how to answer their friends. You know, sometimes when you and I do a show, we'll talk about, well, here's what you need to do. All right, tonight it's not even mystical. All right, what you need to do is know what to say to your Christians who are still woke, friends and family, and to those who are on the left that you encounter at work, because you can have powerful ammunition to push back. The first lie is that you ought not to be involved because you're a Christian. We visited this statement in the last show, but we're gonna do it again. But we want you to be ready for what's going on, and we want you to be a part of what's going on in this time. So, Todd, the first thing that we've got to look at is Trump is the only elected official that is elected by all the people of the United States. Every other elected official is elected by individual regional, the Senate, the Congress, whatever you want to look at. Nobody but the president. Therefore, he represents the will of the people, not the bureaucracy. So I think we ought to run this first video right now, and it'll explain it better than anything. This is a powerful video. Watch it right now.
Many of the people in this room for 4 years failed to cover the fact that Joe Biden was mentally incompetent and was not running the country. It is also true that many people in this room who have used this talking point that Elon is not elected fail to understand the threat to democracy is the unelected bureaucracy of lifetime tenured civil servants who believe they answer to no one, who believe they can do whatever they want without consequence, who believe they can set their own agenda no matter what Americans vote for. So Americans vote for radical FBI reform, and FBI agents say they don't want to change. Or Americans vote for radical reform on our energy policies, but EPA bureaucrats say they don't want to change. Or Americans vote to end DEI, racist DEI policies, and lawyers of the Department of Justice say they don't want to change. What President Trump is doing is he is removing federal bureaucrats who are defying democracy by failing to implement his lawful orders, which are the will of the whole American people.
There it is. Let's just comment on this. I'm going to throw it right to you. Number one, Trump was elected. The bureaucrats that are fighting him and the media that are fighting him are not elected. Yet they are saying they're against Elon Musk because he wasn't elected. And yet, out of all the unelected officials, the only one that has power to do what he's doing is Elon Musk, because he was appointed by the duly voted for Democratic leader of the United States. And again, some people watching are going to say, we're not a democracy, we're a constitutional republic. That's absolutely right. All that does is reinforce the argument that Donald Trump has the power to appoint someone to fulfill his agenda because the American people said, we want you to do this. And the ones who are saying we don't want Donald Trump to be able to do that are using the stupidest argument imaginable, that he was not elected when they were not elected. And even the ones that are screaming that were elected are in a regional position in the Congress, and it is the presidency that is the will of the people. That's it.
That's right.
All right, go ahead.
That's right.
I know you're ready.
Yeah,
I know you're ready.
President Trump's been saying this since day one, that he wants to give power back to the people. And that's essentially what he's doing here. And I know there's some concern about Elon Musk, and we can delve into that a little bit if you'd like. But the bottom line is Elon Musk is somebody that has more money than anybody in the world. So the guy's not in it for the money. I wholly believe that at some point, Elon Musk has seen the corruption, being in the elite circles that he's ran in and seeing a lot of this stuff. And I think there's something in this man. I'm not saying he's a Christian. I don't know. Obviously there's a lot of suspect things about the way he's lived his life. But the bottom line is, it's like Reagan used to say, trust but verify. But the thing is, everything that I've seen so far is in the right direction. It's auditing these federal bureaucracies. It's getting rid of the wasteful spending. It's looking into where all this money went for all these years. And to your point in the beginning of the show, Mario, I think we've only scratched the very, very surface. And I think that we're going to see things that are going to absolutely astonish us as Americans. And I think Donald Trump knows that. And so he's slow. He's doing a lot in a very short period of time, but he's rolling this out so that we almost like, because we can't stomach it all at once. We got to kind of take it in portions to see wow, there was all this money going to fund some rapper in the Middle East. There was all this money going to build a pier in some country that hates us. You're kind of looking at this and saying, what? So I think that's intentional. They want us to see just how bad it was. And this is the first time in my life where I've seen, I know Reagan did trickle-down economics, and, we definitely saw him do some really good things with the economy, but never at this pace and at this scope. And this is the first time in my life where I think we have that opportunity that really John F. Kennedy wanted to do, was to get rid of the federal bureaucracy, the intelligence state, the overgrowth of the military industrial complex. These are things that again, he's going into big pharma. He's going into, areas that no president dared to go into in the past, because honestly, they'd have to fight all the different, there's a lot to that. I'll just say, I don't want to get us kicked off the stream here, but there's a lot to each and every one of these going, and he's doing it all at once. But I think what happened, Mario, and I'd be interested to hear what you think on this. I think during the period of the Biden administration, Donald Trump got very smart people around him. And they thought about what would be the best plan of action once I get in to do this fast and to hit the jugular right away, because they knew that eventually there would be some other plans and things that they would come up with. So they had to come in within the first month and literally do a death blow. And I think that's what they've done. Going after USAID, by going after the funding. Now we're finding out that Soros was receiving funding. Who knew that? People thought the guy just had endless pockets. It turns out the man was receiving funding. There's a lot of people that we didn't realize were receiving funding from our tax dollars. And again, only scratch the surface. Wait till we dig into Ukraine. Wait till we dig into some of the other bureaucracy out there. I think people are going to be shocked. But this is going to help Donald Trump in the end, because there's going to be people that are blue dog Democrats, that are folks that have been lifelong Democrats, that are going to look and they're going to say, wait a minute, this is ridiculous. And so it's the thinking people that are really going to flip over. And I think there's a lot more thinking people that have given the benefit of the doubt to the Democrat Party and that are now finding actually the tinfoil hat people were right.
Yep. And what you said is so right on. It's so correct. I agree with it wholeheartedly. The point that we're in now is that the American Christian needs to wake up. The American Christian needs to wake up. What does this have to do with the Bible? What does this have to do with winning souls? What does this have to do with the move of God? Mario Murillo, why are you so harping on this? I'm going to stop you right there. Let's go back in history for a moment. If you knew of a people that believed in God, in history, believed in freedom, and they were fully aware that they had been invaded insidiously, not through a foreign enemy, but through an infrastructure that came in. The very thing that Abraham Lincoln said was the only way America could die. He said, if destruction be our lot, we ourselves must be the author and finisher of it. Well, he was prophesying the very system that was set up starting 40, 45, 50 years ago, where all of these people, do you think you woke up overnight and suddenly every professor is leftist? 98% of the media is leftist. The Commerce Department, everything infiltrated as much as it was. This beast with all its tentacles took a long time to set in place. But now, if you were to look back in history and see and hear that the reason they didn't protect their children, the reason they didn't push back when a hero arrived who finally had the power to depose of the threat, that the excuse they used was God, that they said God didn't really want us to be in this. God didn't want us to say anything. What kind of feeling would you have about them that they willingly sent their children into a prison, sent their freedom into oblivion, and didn't do anything? How could I be a man of God? You see, look at the crowd behind me. I tell them to get off drugs. I tell them that the devil needs to get off their back. I tell them that they need to be delivered of demons. Am I not going to tell them that while you're still free and God has given you a deliverer, that you should get behind that deliverer, and for the sake of your children and your sanity and your morals and your faith? We have a president that has appointed a commission to prevent the persecution of Christians. How stupid does a pastor look right now who's in favor of the other side? Oh, I don't want to stop the persecution of my people in my congregation. I don't want them to be free of the possibility that their words could put them in prison, or their children will be subjected to grooming or whatever. So we're in a moment where it couldn't be more Christian, couldn't be more of God for us to wake up and to understand what we need to be doing. Go ahead, Todd.
Yeah, this moment is there's been a change. Every so often I can sense in my spirit there's been a seasonal change, and we've stepped when this election happened and the inauguration happened. Everybody who has discernment spiritually can feel that something has shifted in the supernatural realm. And people are not, even in the Christian world, we can sense this. People want authenticity. They want realness. They're looking for the heart posture of the person. What is this person actually doing? Are they kingdom, or are they building their own kingdom? We're in such a pivotal moment right now. And I think everybody has to examine their heart. But Mario, going forward, the Lord wants to move, as we've been reporting on this show since day one. But look, God is allowing on the macro, when it comes to government, when it comes to corruption, when it comes to evil that was so pervasive. These folks, look at the administration in the Biden administration. Look at the health secretary. Come on, give me a break. Look at some of the people. It was the motliest crew of literally, reprobate folk that somehow the media overlooked, that somehow they didn't report on anything crazy about those folks, even though they were literally mentally insane. And somehow people stopped talking about that because the whole media apparatus was in the tank. Okay. And so then you have Donald Trump come back in. Folks aren't having it anymore. I don't care what the drudgereport.com says. I don't care what these sites say. They can put out as much fake news as they want. People don't believe it anymore, Mario. And this is what's changed. They're not going to believe it ever again. And the more that gets uncovered, the more folks awaken. And I'm seeing folks that I never thought would be awake that are now awake. And so they're not going to put the cat back in the bag here. And so I think what's up to us is to seize the moment from a spiritual standpoint and say, okay, there's a lot of confused people. There's a lot of upset people. There's a lot of enraged people, and there's going to be more. But how do we then, present the gospel to them moving forward and have a true move of God? And that's what the Lord is doing in this hour. He's going to utilize all this exposure for his glory, but it's going to take the saints that are prayed up, that are in the spirit, that understand and discern the times.
You see, here's the deal, Todd. Look at this. Yes, you're right. The people that are watching know that the media is lying. The problem is that they don't realize that we are telling the truth. That's where the issue is. It's not that they don't realize that Biden was a total failure, that Biden and the media were together in a confederation to dismantle and destroy this country. They get that. What they don't get is the other side, which is we are telling you the truth. God wants us involved in this. God wants us vocal in this. And the wispy preacher that you may be listening to every week is telling you, oh, you got to stay neutral. Still, before that might have been just a very, very weak argument. At this point, it borders on blasphemy. So now you that are watching have got to believe us. Now, I'm going to tell you one thing you have to believe about us. One of the greatest enemies for American freedom were billionaires who were leftist billionaires who had an awesome, indescribable power to influence thought and ideology. And they had not only the money and the position, they had something else. They had won the minds of the young. That's why they're screaming over Elon Musk, because Elon Musk's advantage to us is tech support. Listen to my words. Tech support. The ability to handle this AI, this power, where the left has had the edge is with the computer companies and the technology. Now the script has been flipped and they are screaming. To show you what I mean, let's roll this video right now.
I think the way to think of me is like I'm a technologist, and I try to make technologies that improve the world and make life better.
Your shirt.
Yeah, and that's why I like my T-shirt says tech support, because I'm here to provide the president with technology support. What all we're really trying to do here is restore the will of the people through the president. And what we're finding is that there's an unelected bureaucracy. Speaking of unelected, there's a vast federal bureaucracy that is implacably opposed to the president and the cabinet. If the will of the president is not implemented, and the president is representative of the people, that means the will of the people is not being implemented. And that means we don't live in a democracy, we live in a bureaucracy. And so I think what we're seeing here is the thrashing of the bureaucracy as we try to restore democracy and the will of the people. Deficit. And if the deficit is not brought under control, America will go bankrupt. This is a very important thing for people to understand.
And they're finding billions, and it will be hundreds of billions of dollars worth of fraud. I say waste and abuse, but fraud, waste, and abuse. And he's doing an amazing job.
See, right away, I want to comment that they're going to go to Fort Knox to find out if we still have gold. And who would have ever thought of that? In 50 years, no president has visited Fort Knox. That's strange. This is the basis of our currency. We're supposed to have, I guess, somewhere around $450 billion worth of gold in Fort Knox. So now anyone that opposes the literally elected president of the United States going to Fort Knox to find out if we have gold, Anyone that's against that, you know what they are.
Hmm.
You know what they are, and you know why they are. So what we're trying to tell people is this: Elon Musk and Donald Trump has assembled a team. Now, here's my question to you. Donald Trump, I don't believe he lost, but in the election of 2020, he was taken from his position, supposedly the election, and he used defeat to be his motivation to put together something amazing. And what is it that you feel he did? What was going on inside of Donald Trump? What did he do?
I have a little bit of inside baseball here because I've spent some time with his son and Cash and some of these guys. So I happen to know them a little bit. And, I heard a lot of their conversations when I was with them. Here's the thing. They have had this time these are some of the most, first of all, everybody's got to understand, these are the top people in their area of expertise. So these are brilliant minds, including Eric, by the way. They're all brilliant people. And so what they did was they utilized what could have been a defeat where a lot of people would have freaked out. They used it to their advantage. They assembled a team and they looked at the facts and they got all the information together and they looked at what was, where was the source of the funding and who is it that was causing the issue and what department was, and so they really looked into these areas. And honestly, I think they're doing a great job. And I heard this. In fact, we talked about it on this show, Mario, is that when they came in, they had a plan. They had a plan right before they even hit the ground running. They were already up and operating, but then they officially got put into position. And so they were able to already have a head start. And that's exactly what they've done. And that's what's caught what many would refer to as the deep state off guard, is because they were so ahead. And they literally did these things so quickly, and they had to within the first month. So right now, the deep state and all these folks, whatever you want to call them, they're playing catch up because their funding's been cut dry. People are being removed left and right. The top of the bureaucracy has been cut off. If you look at like the FBI with Kash Patel, Kash being this last week, him being approved and now officially the head of the FBI. This is groundbreaking because in the rank and file at the FBI, you have a lot of patriots that love America. What was the problem was the top tier, was the upper echelons that were installed by the Biden administration, by the Obama administration, past bureaucrats that have been in there, unelected officials at the top levels that were putting handcuffs on these people. And if you're anybody that's in the intelligence community, you know that to be the truth. So they're ecstatic, Mario. They're super ecstatic right now at the direction. Their handcuffs have been taken off. Handcuffs have been taken off at ICE, Border Patrol. They're actually able to do their job. And President Trump has these folks all behind him. So what they needed to do is they needed to get rid of the unelected bureaucrats. And that's essentially what's happened in such a short period of time and is still happening. And it was like they cut the head off of the snake, which is what they needed to do.
You look at it, and this is like a movie. We're like in one of these action movies. All right. So let me set the stage. There's a patient in a surgery ward. He's being operated on. Now it comes to the knowledge of people that the person doing the anesthesia, the surgeon, the nurses are all in cahoots to kill the patient. And the word gets out to some people in high levels with tremendous intelligence and power that surgical room needs to be invaded. That gurney needs to be confiscated. So they rush in with everyone who is expert and move that patient out of their control into another surgical ward. And they start to give them the right blood, the right anesthetic, the right medicine, and the right procedure to save the patient. That's precisely what has happened here. That is exactly what's going on in the United States right now. Every person that Trump has put into office, from the Secretary of State, where you're watching Marco Rubio is amazing in foreign policy already. We're getting a pulse. The blood pressure is starting to be normalized. But what's happening is outside of there, the people that are part of that medical community that knew the patient was being deliberately killed are screaming because they know that patient's survival is the end of their power. And that's why we've got to support this. That's why we've got to stand behind it. Now, here's where the church is really in danger, is that they're so far behind the general public. The general public is way ahead of us, folks. 80% of Americans are against. 80% of Americans are against men and women's sports.
That's right.
I'll be honest with you. I don't know that percentage is that high inside the church. I don't know. I know of so many woke pastors that I would not want to say. So why is the general public acting, quote unquote, more Christian than the Christians? You see, and then they'll say to a program like you and I, you guys are not acting Christian by saying these things. I can't imagine anything more unchristian than to realize that the outside world has picked up on sin in a way we haven't. And to give you an example of that, let's go ahead and run this. Then I want to get your comment coming out of it. This is about two things that happened. One is Joy Reid has been fired. Thank God. That is so long overdue.
Just did the View. Yeah.
And then you'll see a second part of the video where Hakeem Jeffries just blatantly lies. And it shows you how desperate they are. But let's run it and then we'll comment on it.
Charlie Kirk had this response. Joy Reid, aka the race lady at MSNBC, just had a show canceled because it was unwatchable. Good riddance to the most vitriolic, lowbrow, and unhinged race hustler ever allowed on national television. And Sage Steele actually responded to this by saying, sadly, every word of this is true. Maybe, just maybe, the days of making money off race baiting and divisiveness are beginning to come to an end. I totally agree with that. And Megyn Kelly brought up a good point here. Remember when Joy Reid laughingly mocked white women tears as pathetic and offensive to her? Who's crying now, Joey? Good riddance to the absolute worst person on television, and shame on NBC for letting it go on this long. Okay, so I'm sure that made you smile this Sunday morning. Now let's move to our next story, which is about the Doge cuts, which is continuing to receive backlash every single day. And so we're going to start with Hakeem Jeffries, because what's interesting is in his mind believes that the Democrats are winning, but Jake Tapper on CNN hits him with the numbers. Watch.
We are actually winning in court. The Trump administration is losing. We are partnering on at least 79 different lawsuits that have been brought related to about 35 different illegal or unconstitutional executive orders. And the Trump administration continues to lose in court after court after court. And that effort will, of course, be on. The House Republicans, they've been on the run. They are feeling the pressure of the fact that their policies are deeply unpopular with the American people. And we've seen that play out this past week all across the country. And Democrats are going to continue to make clear that we will stand against the effort to end Medicaid as we know it, stand against the effort to detonate Social Security or Medicare, certainly stand against the effort to undermine veterans' benefits or nutritional assistance to children and families.
So it's certainly true that President Trump's poll numbers are not in a great place, although they're higher than they ever were in his first term. But Congressional Republicans polling is about 40%. Congressional Democrats polling is at about 20%. So that's an issue for you.
It just, right there. Is that hilarious? Did you see that? Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, it's all, he's just gaslighting us is what he's doing. Everything he's saying is not even true. I mean, it's total propaganda, what he's saying, and everybody knows it.
And he was exposed right when he was saying it. Right when he was saying it. He said, you're not winning, you're losing. Go ahead.
You're losing. I hope that everybody understands that the people are behind President Trump. We just saw a landslide election. And trust me, we know there were shenanigans that were still going on even in this election, and we still saw a landslide. So people have to understand how many. I go around all the country, we talk to people in blue cities and red cities. I'm telling you folks that I never would have thought would have voted for Trump and are happy at what he's doing right now. Now, the thing is that we might see things kind of, a little bit hard before it gets better because we're still dealing with the policies of the Biden administration. But hold on, because reinforcement's on the way. We've got economic, money's coming into America by all these deals. President Trump's a deal maker, the art of the deal. The guy's making deal after deal after deal. Billionaires are putting all kinds of money into the United States and our economy. They're building plants back here. The tariffs are going to work. They're already in effect. They're already working. His strategy is right. And when you hear this type of reporting, just understand it's a complete lie. Complete lie. And all the nonsense that they try to put out there, all you got to do is go on X and see what the folks are talking about and look at the real polling, and you'll see the real numbers. And so, Mari, I just think that we got to really make sure, because sometimes you watch some of these things and, the propaganda gets you and you think, how can people all be against it? They're not. It's a lie.
Well, here's the lie. Number one, Hakeem Jeffries, in fact, he didn't say anything that was true.
No.
Maybe he got his own name right, but that's about it. So let's start with this. Number one, the approval rating of the Democratic Congress is 20%. Of the Republican Congress, it's 40%. He said congressional Republicans are on the run. Why? They're twice as much approval rating as you've got. What are they running from? Nothing. So that's a lie. Then he says we are unconstitutional. Not a single executive order that Trump has written is unconstitutional. It's going to all win. It hands down 100% constitutional. Next, it's a total lie. Donald Trump has said emphatically, I'm not going to touch Social Security. I'm not going to touch Medicare. I'm not going to touch benefits to veterans. These are all the three things the Democrats wanted to touch. They wanted to get into Social Security and Medicare and veterans. And Joe Biden treated veterans horribly. So Hakeem Jeffries then says, or to food for children, that we would take it away. He made it very clear. We're not going to remove any funding for the poor, Medicare, veterans benefits, or Social Security. And he lied. And he didn't even mention the things that Trump is taking away. $50 million to buy condoms for Hamas.
Come on.
Millions of dollars to put on a LGBTQ play in a foreign country, and to write a comic book about if you're queer for another nation. Not talking about trying to study mice to see if they could be racist. I mean, none of that was mentioned. None
Gay
of
mice, racist mice, yeah.
And so it goes on and on and on and on. And this is how every Christian has got to understand. Woke is virtually incurable, and it can't be trusted. And even when they're going down in flames, they're going to say the most incredible things. So I want to quote a verse here. It's 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 3 in the New Living Translation. It says, we are human, but we don't wage war as humans do. We use God's mighty weapons, not worldly weapons, to knock down the strongholds of human reasoning and to destroy false arguments. We destroy every proud obstacle that keeps people from knowing God. We capture their rebellious thoughts and teach them to obey Christ. What does what we're exposing right now have to do with the gospel? Everything. Everything. Right. Donald Trump is not a god. Donald Trump is not perfect. Donald Trump, though, is the one selected to come in at a very dangerous moment and bring about an opportunity for the body of Christ to rush in and do the job. And it begins by educating yourself. The points that we're making, you need to watch this program again, go over it, take notes, and understand this is why I'm speaking out. This is why I'm saying what I'm saying. I'm following the word of God, where it says that we will destroy false arguments that keep people from knowing God. When they tell you that you have to shut your church, when they say, even we had a comment by, you said it today during the program, Todd, well, I don't want to use that word because the algorithm might shut down our program. Think about the fact that we had to say that. That right. tells you something, that we have got to be on the side of truth. And nobody is supposed to be a spectator at this time. Go ahead, Todd. I know you're
100%. Well, and look at the fruit. Look at the Bible says you know them by their fruit. President Trump has continuously surrounded himself by Christian leaders. Now, people say, well, I don't agree with this one being there or whatever. Listen, now I understand what you're saying, but the bottom line is the man who's sitting there looking at the Christian community and saying, hey, I want you around me. I want prayer. I want to make it easy easier for you to be about the gospel and to do the work of the kingdom. And that's been the conversations that I've witnessed, Mario, whenever I've been invited to anything or been down at Mar-a-Lago or any different thing. There's always an element of Christianity. There's always an element of protecting religious liberty and freedom, of having prayer, fighting for just causes that we believe in. The other administration was exact stark opposite. In fact, I've just really tried to, understand in my brain how anybody could say I'm a Christian Democrat, especially with the current state of the Democrat Party. I can understand maybe many years ago, but at this point where we're at and what we just walked out of, which I don't understand how more pastors, and maybe you can help me. I know, Mario, we're on the same page on this, but when you say woke pastors, I don't understand how somebody could not see the fight for life and for the baby in the womb. I don't understand how somebody could not see the fight for marriage between a man and a woman, and all the litany of things that we could talk about over and over and over again. I think about how many years ago women fought to be in sports. Women fought to actually have equal rights in sports, and how the Democrat Party got to a place where they went so out on, I don't know, some other planet and started trying to put men in women's sports. And somehow the women's rights movement was okay with that. How did anybody get convinced of that? That is insane in my mind. I can just go down the list of things like that. So, I think we're at a point now where it's a very real moment where we have to look and say, yes, this has been a spiritual battle. Hello, of course it has. And the bottom line is we're looking at two very stark visions for our country. And so, the other thing, and I'll leave it with this, I don't understand how people were silent over the last 4 years that are supposedly Christians that are now speaking and concerned about Donald Trump. It's like, where were you the last 4 years? I mean, did you not see? And maybe they weren't on the front line dealing with some of the warfare. I don't know. But to me, it's anybody with discernment can see this. But it really does blow my mind, Mario.
It is very mind-blowing. Now, the American military, the greatest in the world, a absolute firewall against tyranny. And now they're angry that Trump is going to change what's going on at the Pentagon. And ABC tried to hit one of our elected officials, Mike Waller. Congressman Mike Waller had this to say. It is very powerful. Watch it right now.
Bottom line here, to me, is the Department of Defense needed a complete overhaul. President Trump ran on that. He said he was going to provide the Department of Defense an overhaul. We are in the most precarious place since the lead up to World War II, Martha, in large part because of the disastrous foreign policy of the Biden administration, including decisions made at the highest levels of the Pentagon, starting with that disastrous withdrawal in Afghanistan. So the idea that there wouldn't be changes at the Pentagon, that they would somehow be exempt from changes in leadership with a new administration and a new foreign policy, and a Defense Department that is focused on military readiness above all other considerations. I don't know why anybody's surprised by changes at the upper echelon of the Defense Department. They're not exempt from failure or the need for a change in direction.
Now, I'm going to tell you, the thing I like about what Mike Waller has just said is this. It gets down to the morale of the American soldier. It goes down to the morale of the American soldier. The one thing that is true in war, and Sun Tzu said it, that the general controls the morale of the soldiers. So can you imagine the morale of an army that left Afghanistan the way we left Afghanistan, or is dealing with the wokeness that we're going to have men and women in women's bathrooms in the military. We're going to have transgender people in the military, and we're going to go to war with that. There's not an honest military mind anywhere in the world that would agree that that is good for warfare. It is not. And this is it. It is not a social society, the military. And it has to be DEI in the military makes less sense than DEI in anything else. And the thing that makes me so angry with DEI is that the NFL says they're for it, but they would never practice it. Look at me, everybody. The NFL says they believe in DEI, but they would never practice it. They're not going to put anyone but the best quarterback. They don't care about the color of the quarterback. He's got to be a winner. The Lions got to be a winner. Everybody in on that team. Coaches are fired regardless of race, regardless of DEI. They are fired if they are not winners. So when they give us all this lecture about DEI and they do all this stuff to make us think that they are in DEI, they don't practice. It's a huge hypocrisy. To the 10th degree, American soldiers have got to be free of DEI. We better make sure that whoever is in our fighting force is the best trained, that nobody got put in a command where lives could be lost because of their race or because there was an inequality of gender. That is patently absurd. And that's what's coming back. Common sense. Common sense is the natural enemy of DEI because it doesn't make sense. Now, one more. Go ahead.
Okay. DEI, in my opinion, is part of the demonic agenda that these guys were pushing. And I'll give you an example. I mean, we were at a restaurant last night. This was a chain. I won't get into who it was, but, back about 10, 15 years ago, you could go in there and get really good service. It's a high-end chain. It was a nice restaurant. Now, I mean, the place was a disaster. We went in the restroom there. It looked like a New York subway. I mean, it was horrible. And I thought to myself, what's going on? And then I saw who was running the restaurant, and it was obviously a DEI hire. And Mario, what this did was this put folks that were honestly in the 80s would have been considered mentally ill in positions of power all throughout our government. I want to give another example. In our local county, there's a battle that's going on right now, and it's actually just started in a wage where Democrats and plants are running as conservatives, running as Republicans. And in the county commission level and different levels, there's a real battle right now. And a lot of times conservatives and Christians, we're only present even for in the election, which sometimes we're not even present for that. And then we step back. I want you to know that these battles are still raging in our communities right now. So although we've won this election, there's a lot of fight to be had. And you better believe that these leftist organizers know this and understand how many of their plants are still in there. And so we have to continue. This is where we can't let up our guard. And if you get too close to any of their agenda or you get too close to being a threat to them, they try to come after you. We've seen this as a family. We've seen it as a ministry. When you start causing problems for them, so we need your prayers, and there needs to be more folks speaking out. And there needs to be more folks understanding that even though we've won a substantial battle, that these types of ministries are the ones that really we need you to get behind. We need a war chest because we're in a war. And although the election went our way, the war is not won yet, okay? And this is what everybody has to understand. And so we're still in this, and I know many of you are in this, and we need to continue to pray this through. Of course, winning souls is the most important aspect of this, but there's many different layers to this.
And one of the things that you're going to see is Trump win in the courts. This is the final onslaught. The final enemy is activist judges, lawfare. It's still going on. And he's going to win. And I want to run this video because I want you to see our president at work in a very special setting. Let's roll that right now.
You in court, President Trump just laid the smackdown on Maine's Governor Janet Mills and right to her face for defying his executive order preventing trans athletes from competing in girls' and women's sports. Watch.
I understand Maine. Is Maine here, the governor of Maine? Well, are you not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with state and federal laws.
We are the federal law. Well, you better do it. You better do it because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't. And by the way, your population, even though it's somewhat liberal, although I did very well there, your population doesn't want men playing in women's sports. So you better comply because otherwise you're not getting any federal funding.
See you in court.
Every state, good. I'll see you in court. I look forward to that. That should be a real easy one. And enjoy your life after governor because I don't think you'll be in elected politics.
Just hours after that dust-up at the governor's meeting, the Department of Education announcing a new Title IX investigation into Maine over the boys and girls in sports issue. It could result in Maine losing $250 million in annual federal funding. Judge, it's funny, you go to Nice luncheon with a bunch of other governors, and then bam, right in the face.
Well, you know, it shouldn't have been a surprise because when Joe Biden left office, he tried to change Title IX and he tried to add the transgender identity as being a basis for discrimination. And so a federal judge has since vacated that, and the president has issued an executive order. And this should not be a surprise to any Democrat because the country, in incredible numbers, I don't know what the stats are, but the country is against
80%
men in women's sports. Everybody knows that a transgender is at a physical advantage over girls, okay, if you're playing in a girls' sport. So president's saying you're going to jeopardize $250 million in federal funding, and she's going to say, well, I'm following federal law and state law. Who cares what the state law said? The federal law has supremacy on this issue. It's federal money, okay, and she's going to lose. And it's stupid of her, as far as I'm concerned, to say, well, you know, with the federal law supports us. No, you're stupid. It doesn't.
It doesn't support it. Now, I want to read a verse. 1 Timothy 3, verse 15, but sanctify the Lord God in your hearts and always be ready to give a defense to everyone who asks you a reason for the hope that lies within you with meekness and fear. We need to witness. We need to share our faith. That I know. But I really believe this. The Christian population is already identified with the policies of Donald Trump. I'm going to leave the name Donald Trump out of it. We're already biblically aligned with him. So now when it comes down to it, there is something that is now become factually interchangeable. Your faith has got to be demonstrated in the choices you make in your opinions on political policy. It's not our decision. They brought the fight to us. They jumped our fence. They got in our business. They tried to control us. So now we need to be articulate defenders of why we don't think there are more than two genders, why we believe the LGBTQ agenda is evil, why we believe that in America, the best and the sincerest and the best educated deserve the positions of power. Those things are non-negotiable for a Christian. And I truly believe that God has got us where we need to be in order to do that. And there's one more verse I want to read, and it is Psalm 94. I want to read a few verses. Then I'm going to ask Todd to comment. Blessed is the man whom you instruct, O Lord, and teach out of your law, that you may give him rest from the days of adversity, until the pit is dug for the wicked. For the Lord will not cast off his people, nor will he forsake his inheritance, but judgment will return to righteousness, and all the upright in heart will follow it. Who will rise up for me against the evildoers? Who will stand up for me against the workers of iniquity? That's what this show is about. Go ahead, Todd.
That's right. Send me, I'll go. You know, this is a rebuilding of the wall season. It's a Nehemiah season. And, you know, I know that the hour is late and there's many, many signs in the times. We're seeing many, many things happening, but God has given us an opportune moment to really step into our calling and our purpose in this hour. And we really, if you didn't see last week's show, you should watch it because it's about that. But that led up to what we're talking about today. And Donald Trump is a vessel that God has used for an alignment. But the truth of the matter is, it's really about the church of Jesus Christ and the Great Commission and being empowered and having, you know, we can't have fear. We can't sit and say, what's going to happen next? I mean, there are going to be things that are going to come. There are going to be, I guarantee you during this presidency, there's going to be some pretty, you know, crazy things that happen. But the thing is that just as God has gotten us to where we are today, we have to believe that he goes before us. We have to believe that he is our rod and he's our